Hello, everyone, and welcome to my talk, The Great Divergence, the Widening Gap Between Industry and University Java. Now, thinking about it, that title was quite a bit too long. It even looks off a little bit on the DevOps mobile app, so maybe I'll put a shorter title for next time. But nice to see everyone here. I'm Felipe, and just before we get started with anything, so if you're looking for an Yanaga that worked at Google, you're looking for me. So you're in the right place. So if that's what you saw in the description, that's great. Now, if you're looking for an Yanaga that also worked at Google, that has a lot of white hair, then you're really looking for my dad. In this picture, he doesn't have white hair, but I promise if you see him in person, he has a lot more white hair. This is just Photoshop. And he's a regular attendee at these things. So this is him, I think, like 5 or 6 years ago, and you can actually see him on the scrolling pictures behind you before the sessions. And he's my dad. He's the reason why I think I went into Java in the first place. And a lot of the industry perspectives that I'm going to give come from him. And it's a great honor to be here at DevVox and being sort of on the stage with the other speakers and the speakers that came before me as well. Now, that being said, this is your chance to get out if you had the wrong Yanaga. I promise it won't be sad. But now getting to introductions. So I'm Felipe. Last gave this talk at DevVox UK, but a little bit of background for me. I'm a student at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in the United States. If you're not familiar with that university, the one distinguished alumni that went there is Michael Jordan, basketball player. I know there's a Michael Jordan in computer science as well. And I'm also a student at Duke University. Distinguished alumni are like Tim Cook and Melinda Gates, I believe. And this is all through a program called the Robertson, who are kindly sponsoring me to come give this talk to you all. So thank you to them. With regards to industry experience, I worked at Amazon 2 years ago, and I worked at Google in their crowdsourced data collection team, collecting data for large language models. And I am here today not because of any industry experience, but mostly because of what I think is a distinguishing factor, such as so I'm a teaching assistant to a software engineering class at UNC with over 180 students. I've hosted over lots of workshops for over 100 students, talking to them about Java technologies. And I'm also a published researcher, which focuses on improving educational software for students currently at university. But enough about me. Today we're here to talk about Java. But we're not really here to talk about the Java that you all use, right? You all fellow Jedi Masters are really, with advanced uses for Java, and you know a lot about the language. We're really here to talk about the ones that are beginner Java users, such as Baby Yoda right here. And as you can probably tell, there's a big gap between these two. And we're really going to talk about how can we bridge this gap and make sure that we're constantly pushing Java forward. To start off, let's talk about industry. So, we're here at DevVox. Needless to say, Java is prospering, Java is good, Java is not dead. You can go to any of the sessions over here or talk to any other people in any of the booths, and you're going to have a great time talking about Java and all the technologies that it provides. If you like examples of companies that are using Java, right, you look at any of the companies that are sponsoring us. So I could literally just copy and paste their logos from the DevVox website. And when it comes to advances in Java, right, if you were at the keynote yesterday, Brian Gutz talked a lot about the future of Java and the roadmaps. So Java is constantly looking to other languages and seeing in what ways it could improve so to provide the best developer experience for its developers. With that being said, Java constantly goes down in rankings on GitHub over the years. You could call this as a non-objective metric, but the reality is, right, GitHub just counts lines of code for the most part. And you can see that JavaScript has been dominating. I don't know how. Don't ask me. And then Python has increasingly gone up and Java has gone down. And we're going to talk a little bit about the reasons why, but it is surprising to me that the Java industry is so strong, and yet we see these patterns happening. And yesterday I was looking at other metrics other than GitHub to give some perspective. So this is the TOB index, I suppose. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But it measures relevant Google searches for programming languages and questions about those. So you can see that, 2002, Java was about 26% of those searches. And then has it gone down to about less than 10%. And whereas Python, responsible for about, 1% of the searches, has now gone up to 14, 13%. You can attribute those to large language models, but I'm not really concerned about the current number. I'm concerned about the trend, right? Why is it that Java has increasingly gone down, whereas Python has had a pretty sharp, steady increase in the number of relevant searches? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So why? And I think that, we kind of looked at industry and saw the industry still pretty strong. But really what we need to focus on, I think, is university, right? Education. Because I think that the foundation of a lot of people's passions for programming languages comes from just starting at university. What languages you get taught, how you get taught, what are the sort of engagements that you have with this programming language. So back then, for those that were here early, I asked, who used Java in college to some extent? And the majority of the people said yes. So this is from a paper from the ACM, so the Association for Computer Machinery. So the Turing Award is provided by the ACM. So Java has been the dominant introductory teaching language over the past decade. And so this article was posted in 2014. So 2014, before, most of the programming courses taught in universities were using Java. But, 2014 is like a really long time ago. Well, not really, but Java has been around for around 28 years, so it's about 30% of that. So now universities are moving away from that, and this is a quote from a Stanford CS professor on an article published in their student journal after they moved away from Java in its introductory course. So to quote what he said, "Java has stabilized. It was clear that many universities was going in that direction. It's 2017 now, and Java is showing its age." So that's what their excuse was for moving away from Java as an introductory programming language and moving towards Python. Now, this is not only at Stanford. The data is not anecdotal. So this is a survey of the top 70 universities in the US and the programming languages that they use in their introductory courses. So for a long time, Java was the most dominant one. Unfortunately, I don't have the figure. But now the majority of universities teach Python as an introductory course for their programming language. Java is still over there, but you can see that there are other, it's not the majority anymore. And it kind of checks out with the trends that we saw from the indexes before. So Python has increased in popularity while Java has gone down. And just as an anecdotal piece of evidence as well. So my curriculum back before I joined university, right? So Comp 110 is our introductory course that was taught in Java. Comp 210, our data structures course, also taught in Java. Object-oriented programming taught in Java. And then, our systems course was taught in C, computer architecture, obviously in C, MIPS. And then our databases course was taught in Java. But this is kind of like a rough sketch of what a first general glance at a curriculum looks like. And for the most part, you see Java, right? Other than the classes that you expect to see C and lower level languages in, most part everyone was using Java. Now this was about 10 years before I joined university, so around 2010. So this is the current state when we're looking at 2023. So the introductory programming course is taught in Python. Data structures still taught in Java. Object-oriented programming still taught in Java. The systems courses are still the same. And then databases also moved to Python. But the question is, this is just again anecdotal example, but the trend is that Java is slowly getting replaced by these other languages, especially in university. And you have the case that it's easier and so on and so forth. We're going to talk about that later. But really what we want to emphasize is the trend of what's happening here. So I was curious about this. I saw this happening. I was looking at the data as a Java guy. I was pretty offended that they chose Python over Java. But I was like, what is happening? And so for context, I helped to teach a class called Foundations of Software Engineering. So a lot of universities in the US offer what's called a software engineering course, where they teach you not only about basics of programming, but also how to use frameworks, how to create a REST API, how to interact with other applications, so on and so forth. The class had over 180 students, and it was taught in Python, just to give you context. And as I was helping to teach the class, during the course, I was asking students their opinions about Java through a form. And now we're going to look at the results of what they think about different programming languages. So the first question that I asked them was, currently, what language is in highest demand in industry? So out of a total of 181 students, about 42% of them said that Python is the highest demand, followed by JavaScript and Java. And now Java which was surprising to me, given that the majority of the courses that they saw before taking this course, which is fairly advanced, was in Java. And yet they see that the majority of the industry demands Python and JavaScript instead. What language would you use to build a REST API? 67% of students said Python, the overwhelming majority. And again, this is coming from the context that the majority of the students took courses, most of their high-level courses in Java right before this. And yet they chose to use Python as the programming language for their REST APIs. And then when rating these languages from not modern to modern, most of them chose Python as the most modern language, followed by JavaScript and Java. And again, there's the issue of versioning and so on and so forth. But in general, that's the high-level view of what students think about on the modernity scale. When asked how likely would you be to find any of these in a particular company's tech stack, most of them said Python and JavaScript over Java. And that said, we're going to see, look into reasons why that is, why they think Java. So in the other graphs, Java was a bit lower, but this one, Java is pretty close to them, but we're going to look into the reason why they said that. And then, which programming languages have you used to make a personal project? Again, Python is the overwhelming majority. Not overwhelming, but the majority, and Java and JavaScript followed. So Java did beat JavaScript on this one. And now I think, this is not going to come to a surprise to anyone, but I made a word cloud for these students, and I asked them, describe Java in one word. And the words they said were tedious and boring, verbose, outdated, bloated. And these are not things that are uncommon, right? If you scroll through your Twitter timeline every 2 months or so, there's always a debate about, Python is better than Java, JavaScript is better than TypeScript or anything of the sort. But I think these are common things that you see when talking about Java. And one quote that a student said that I thought was particularly interesting was, I think that it's probably good for Java is probably good for helping to maintain legacy code, but I would pretty much choose any language other than C to work in besides Java if I had the chance. Now, how many of you would choose to program any application with C over Java? You're my hero right there. Right, so this is just to show that the perspective that these students have of Java is completely different than the one we have. And why is that? And I think some part of it has to do with the on-ramp, right? So how hard is it to get introduced to a language when you first start it? And for Python, you could think about something like this, right? But when you look at Java, at least from the perspective of an outsider here, students think that it more so looks like this. It's an impossible task. The first time that you open a Java application, your hello world, you're hit with public class. What is public? What is a class? What is static void main? And all these questions, right? And when you talk to a lot of instructors, and I don't mean any harm in saying this, but they say that that's fine. You don't have to explain these terms to students, and you just create this sort of magic around what does static mean, what does void mean, what is the class, and so on and so forth. And I think that magic is good to some extent, but it also takes away some of that. I think a task can't be too easy that the student goes ahead and does it and thinks it's boring, but it also can be too difficult where the student is not engaged with the topic anymore. And I think that when you have something like this, especially when you're first starting, it's kind of overwhelming to look at all these things and understand what they mean. And which is why I think that JAP 445 is so important, right? So unnamed classes and instance main methods. So this talks about reducing the boilerplate code for Java and making sure that students, when they first start with the language, they have a really, they don't have such a tough time with the on-ramp. They have something that looks more like what Python had. And this is just so when students first start taking courses in a language, right? They're not overwhelmed by all these things. Wow, there's so much boilerplate code. I just want to write code. I don't want to have to deal with all these things that I don't know yet. But I think making that task easier will definitely help in this scenario. So we're talking about Java, right? But we're really talking about the Java language itself. But we really need to talk about the Java ecosystem, right? I don't think anyone here uses Java by itself. Java is kind of a bubble. It's a community, right? They're the developers that make Java, but they're also the libraries and all the other tools that we use in order to make Java a more interesting experience. So, for example, SDK man, I can't think of the last time that I actually went to the Oracle website to download any Java distribution. I've been using SDK man ever since I found out about it. JBang, if you're using Java for scripting, a lot of people turn to Python. JBang makes it super easy for you to script with Python. Quarkus, right, the new framework released by Red Hat, really good hot reload capabilities. And GraalVM, right, the ability to kind of use native executables as opposed to running things with the JVM makes things, just some of the innovations that Java has. But then again, this is an ecosystem, right? We're not talking about Java as a language by itself, but the tools around it. And I think that especially when you first start school, it's really hard to get into you're thinking about Java as a language, but really no programming language exists in a vacuum. All programming languages have tools and developers around it. And that's what really makes, I think, the difference over time. And when it comes to Java from a perspective of a student, right? I think the first task and the first thing that we need to think about is installing Java. But the truth is, if you're a student, one does not simply install Java. It's not an easy task to make. And I'll take you back to my first semester taking a Java course. And I was told, install Java in your machine. Now, I tried it by myself first. And, if you look up how to install Java in Google, the first website that shows up is java.com. Now, if you ever try to download anything from java.com, it's not the most straightforward way. But also the issue is when you look up how to install Java, about 10 Oracle websites pop up that all give different instructions and different ways to download the platform. Now, Oracle did come out with dev.java as the standard way of looking at Java and installing the distributions, but still, all these websites still show up. Now, thankfully, I had my dad to help me out and tell me how to actually install Java. But think about all the other 200 or so students in that class that didn't have a parent that was educated in any programming language of the sort, and were actually going through how to install Java online and have to go through the process of clicking every link and trying to find out which one it was. And then different students post that they were downloading from different websites. Am I downloading the right one? And so this creates a terrible experience for the student. Now, if you knew SDKman back then, you could probably just go SDKman and SDK install any of the distributions that you wanted for Java. But again, this is one of the things that you would only know about SDKman if you were part of the community. If you're not part of the Java community, you'd have a really tough time getting to that. And same thing for choosing your first IDE, right? When it comes to Java, right, you have the option, you can use VS Code with the Java extension, IntelliJ, which is the majority of people use as given by the keynote, and also Eclipse and Vim. Vim is if you're really into that, or Emacs. I forgot to put Emacs over here as well. But then again, it's just another decision that the student has to make when they first start programming, right? So I think for the most part, VS Code is what students use, at least in the universities that I've spoken to, that I run workshops in. But then again, especially when you're starting, you don't want all of these options. You really want to give them specific instructions like, hey, this is what you want. You want to use IntelliJ, you go to SDKman, you just run it in your terminal, and you install any for example, the OpenJDK distribution. Um, or you could have something like JBang, right? So JBang, you can install it through SDK man, and it runs really, if you just run JBang, if you don't have Java installed, it will install it for you, and it provides a really nice environment for you to develop. So you can use just a terminal, you can use Vim to develop with JBang, but you could also integrate it with any IDE and it works fine. And it really helps you because it takes away all the abstractions away. And you don't have to make as many choices, right? You can just have JBang on your machine and it works. Now, a lot of the words that we saw before were like stereotypes about Java. And now we're gonna demystify sort of some of them. So a lot of the people, when I asked, they said Java is bloated, Java is slow. And I was asking why. And their answer was, when you're looking for Java frameworks, they use Next.js or Express.js and FastAPI, Django, and all those have like hot reload capability. And they said, well, but Java doesn't have hot reload capabilities. But really, when you think about it, right, it's not that Java doesn't have it. Quarkus has hot reload capabilities. Spring Boot with the DevTools has hot reload capabilities. But it's just the misconception of what students think Java is versus what Java actually is. And when they talk about Java being slow, and like literally, if you're a university curriculum, there's no we don't ever benchmark anything as being fast or slow. We really just want to create solutions to problems using data structures. So we never measure the speed of your code to a reasonable amount, to the millisecond pattern. But still, every student gets the idea that Java is slow. And it really baffles me as to why. But really, if you think about Java is slow as compared to other languages, if you attended any of the GraalVM talks, Java is as fast as it's ever been, and as slimmer as it could be. And we're really seeing a lot of improvements. But again, these are things that you only learn once you're in the Java community, once you're in the Java bubble. If you're an outsider just Googling things at random, it's really hard to run into these tools that really make the Java development experience great. But the thing is, how to learn about these, right? Again, I've been talking about like how great these tools are and how it helps the development process, but how do we get to know these? Again, I learned these because I had a parent that was well-versed in Java, and it was able to teach me, hey, this is how you actually use it. But a lot of people don't have that knowledge. And I'll show you a couple of quotes from students and hearing what they say. So I think Java is cool to learn the important CS concepts, but around here, UNCCS doesn't really show me how it's applicable in the real world. So, Java is great if you want to do your data structures course. Java is great if you want to learn object-oriented programming, but like there's no real application in the real world. And as I said, Java in industry is as strong as ever. If you talk to most of the attendees here, if you attend any talk, if you go to any booth, they're going to talk about how they're using Java in the real world to solve real-world problems. And yet, the view that students have is that Java is purely, to teach you the concepts. But once things get real, then when you start using Python and JavaScript. And again, as a disclaimer, I'm not saying that I have a problem with you using Python, TypeScript, JavaScript, Go, C++. You're welcome to choose any language you want. I'm just saying that there shouldn't be a stigma against Java. Java, you never see a debate in your timeline about JavaScript being dead or Python being dead, but everyone just says Java is dead. Java is really old. Nobody uses Java anymore, and that's really something to think about. Like, why is there a stigma towards Java? And I think Java, in my experience, is a great language to learn programming foundations. But for my job and internship and speaking with the senior devs, it seems that Java is a little outdated. Now, the real question here is, who were the senior devs that they were talking to? So clearly not any one of us. But raise your hand if someone or an intern that you had or a young student or any relative came to you and asked about Java. Has anyone ever had that happen to you? Okay. Do you feel like they had like a negative perspective on Java from university? Okay, I'm seeing some nods. Yeah, and so that's the thing, right? Again, it's really hard to get into the Java ecosystem. And when people reached out and they're trying to learn, like, hey, what are we talking about? And they just get said, well, nobody uses Java anymore. But the real question is, who are they talking to? And I think that one of the things about the Python and the JavaScript community is that they're really good at reaching to students. If you're at any university, you're going to see a lot of Python workshops, JavaScript workshops, and about Python and JavaScript industry speakers coming in, but you don't see a lot of Java. Again, most of the experience that students have with Java comes from like introductory courses, data structures, which most students consider like, oh, I have to do this to get an actual software engineering job, and not as actually anything that you really need. But then this creates this huge divide between the community, which is you have someone that knows Java tools and knows the experience and knows how to get everything done, but you have novice Java developers that get really stuck on like, how do I even get started? And everything that if you don't know the right tools, everything becomes really difficult. And I think that that's something we need to think about. And how can we help to make this happen? And, I have a special feature on the slides. Peter is right here in the front row as well. But I think a lot of it is community, right? I've spoken about people come to the university to give workshops on JavaScript. Hey, if you ever want to use something like this to build a REST API, this is how you do it. This is the framework. These are the steps. If you want to watch some videos, here's some good people that have great content for you. If you want to use Python, you can use Fast API. If you want to do anything machine learning related, here's Fast API, a tutorial or a TensorFlow, and a library that you can use to do it. But you don't see a lot of that around with Java. Now again, industry in Java is very strong. You can see that Java comes in just at DevOps, right? A lot of these booths, a lot of these workshops, a lot of things that you can do. And yet you don't see a lot of people coming to universities and talking about these topics, right? And I think we put a lot of importance on how much we like to keep the industry Java going forward, but really academia is suffering from the lack of attention that they get. And so I would like to spend the rest of this talk talking a little bit about actionable steps that we can take to make sure that we reverse that trend that we saw in the beginning, and that we see that Java continues to prosper, not only in industry as it does here at DevVox, but also in academia, really all around the world. To start off, another special feature, Tom Cools. He's at an info support booth here at DevVox. If you haven't been there, you should definitely go and talk to them. They're really incredible people. And he's carrying his little Java mug. But I've spoken to Tom many times before, and Tom, I think, is a great example of a person that saw the stigma that Java had a couple of years ago, and he said, that's not what I want for the future of Java. What can we do about it? And so Tom, and I think info support in general, works with local schools and universities to go and give them workshops on what Java looks like in the real world. Now, students don't get the perspective of only Java being used in courses and in academia to learn your data structures, object-oriented programming, but they also learn, hey, Java is not only for those things. Java is actually used in real-world applications, and this is how we use them. They invite students to come work with them on little projects, actually mentor students and teach them like, hey, if you want to use Java, I know this is what they taught in school, but here's what we can use in industry as well. And they also work with a lot of professors at universities to make sure that they always have the most up-to-date technology. Now, this is not to say that, wow, this is the fault of the professors that don't update their software, they don't know anything about Java. Their thing is academia, they're doing research. We, as industry developers, need to talk to them and say, hey, I know this is what you do, but we can really help each other to get the latest and greatest to our students. And another thing that we can do is invite young developers to your local Jug. I can't emphasize this enough, and I've seen Jugs all around, and I think Jug meetings are great, but I think that there's sort of a lack of university students in these Jugs. And this is not to say that, you could argue that a lot of the concepts that you talk about in Jugs are fairly advanced, but I think that with the right approach and with the right mentorship, you can truly get students to actually enjoy these experiences and make sure that they attend. And again, especially university students, because I think that as we're sort of neglecting them in general by taking away these tools that we have and by not sharing them with them. And having them come to your local jug is a great way to meet people that actually use Java in the real world and can use these technologies to show them, hey, what you learn in school is not actually what we use. And mentorship as well. So another feature, Brian, but you really want to help these students and guide them in the right direction. I know it takes a little bit of your time to go and message and interact with these students about, hey, like this is how we use Java. These are tools like Maven, Gradle, JBang, SDKman. You don't have to go and look at the 30 Oracle websites to download your Java distribution. This is how we do it. If you're having trouble picking a framework or starting out, come in, let me help you, let me send some resources. And it really, as an industry developer, it does take a little bit of your time. And I know you all have very busy lives and very busy schedules. But I think if you can donate just 10 minutes of your day to checking in with a student and going, hey, this is what we can do. It doesn't have to be a big commitment like going and interacting with the local universities and the local professors. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go through the trouble of talking to a lot of the speakers and saying, hey, can you come give an introductory talk because we want to bring university students to our local jug. It really doesn't have to be that. It can be a 10-minute interaction with a student from a university and just getting the word out to them because they will spread the word for you. As a student, I can say that most of us are really excited about technology. And when we learn something new and cool that we can use, we're eager to share that with our colleagues. And so you really just need to plant the seed. The Java that your colleagues talk about, the Java that you think you know, is actually not the real Java. And this is the real Java. And with that being said, the Java we have now, we owe it to you. Right? So thank you for all the work that you've done for the Java community, keeping it growing, keeping it a really nice community to be a part of. As someone that started doing computer science 4 years ago, I can't thank all of you enough for welcoming me into the community. I reached out to a lot of people on Twitter about how can I use this? What's the best way to do it? If I want to get started with this, I want to build this project, what are the tools that I can use? And everyone has been incredibly kind to me in answering me and helping me with these things. But then again, I reached out to them, but I think we really need to change that dynamic and make sure that we're reaching out to the students and making sure that if they ever need help, we're here for them. Because we have to remember that tomorrow's Java lies on the shoulders of the next generation of developers. Java might be great for now. Java is still going to be great for the next 10, 15 years, as long as we're around. But what about the next generation of developers? What about the people that are coming in and they're learning about Java? What are they going to think? Are they going to have the same perspective of Java that we did? Or are they going to have the same perspective of Java that is taught to them through social media and through what their colleagues say? And that's something that I think about every day, and that's something that I'm working towards. And these are, as I said, those are a couple of the initiatives that we can take. And I think that this is not a single person that is going to change everything. I don't think that if Venkat starts going to your local universities and talking about Java all day, every day, I don't think that's going to be the determining factor. I think the determining factor will be how much we do as a community to ensure that students, when learning Java, get the support that they need and they get the Java that we know with the tools that we use and not what's just out there in the internet. That being said, thank you. If you'd like to know more about Java and the initiatives that I do with regards to education, you can follow me at Yanaga on Twitter. And this was a pretty short introduction, but mostly because I wanted to get to know and ask a little bit of questions about you guys, so that's fine. If you like to leave, that's okay. But I really wanted to get to know, from your perspective, right? If you felt that this is true, if you felt that this is actually what happened. So, does anyone have any thoughts? I'm sorry to call you out, but if the content of the talk is over. But I really just wanted to ask, like, what do you think about? Do you think this rings true to you? Do you think that you see this perspective? Because that's my perspective coming from the U.S., but I really like to know the perspective from Europe and other parts of the world. Anyone? that's totally fine if you don't. But yeah, feel free to come by. Oh, Max.
One issue I see is I actually been offering to go to universities, but the university I can say, oh, we don't have time for Java
Oh,
or something like that.
okay.
And I,
Well, so Max said that Max has been offering to go and talk to universities about technologies, Java technologies, but they're actually saying that we don't have time for Java. And I think this just sort of points out how severe the issue is. That we're at the point where we don't even want to know about Java technologies. Java is not no longer the latest and greatest. It's just like one of the codes said, here to maintain legacy code. And I think that so I don't know about Europe and how it works, but in the United States, a lot of the universities have what we call professor of the practice, and that's something that I really encourage people that are experienced developers to look into. They're looking for a side gig. So professor of the practice are a professor that come to universities. They teach one class and one class only. And they're really people that have been in industry for a long time. And they go to these universities and you teach them about industry practices. And you get to run a course on any topic that you really would like, that you think fit students' needs. And what I've seen, at least from a lot of perspectives, that industry developers from C++, from Python, JavaScript, take a lot of those positions. And it's sort of what gives most of the students this idea that, hey, you know, this industry guy came into my university. He's teaching me about JavaScript and Python. Therefore, no one is using Java. And I think that this is just one of the ways that we can start to sort of break through this stigma. And I think, again, it's really concerning that we're already at the point that universities are saying we don't want anything to do with Java because we don't care about it anymore. But any other comments? Yes.
well, in Leuven, it's still kind of okay
Mm-hmm.
because over there, when I go to the students, they learn both Java and Python.
Mm-hmm.
And when they learn Java, they use Maven, Spring Boot, so it seems to be still kind of okay. And it's like a more 50-50 situation. Some students really prefer Java, and
Okay.
they explicitly say it as well. And then you have the other side that says, nah, Java, I use Python.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it feels still 50-50, kind of.
Okay. Well, thank you. So basically, what he said was, when I go to local universities, they're very 50-50. A lot of people really like Python still, but some really don't. And and I think what you said really breaks down what kind of this is about. People have really strong opinions, right? So either they really love Java or they really hate Java. They're really not on the fence about it. But I think again, as I said in the disclaimer, this is not to say that Java is like the only way. The Java is better than the other programming languages. This is just to say there's no reason for students to have the stigma they have against Java. Like I said, you don't see people saying Python is dead, JavaScript is dead, C++ is dead, but you see people constantly badgering on about Java being dead, Java being slow, Java being bloated, Java taking up, a lot of your memory. But I think that's a good point that like students are really they can be 50-50, but they're very opinionated about it. And again, just emphasizes the point that I had. But if anyone had any other contributions they want to give? If not, again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate the people that raised their hands and interacted. And I really hope that you can see how important this cause is and that we truly need to do something about it. But thank you for your time.